Hello everybody, Mark here, and I have a very special guest. We have Ray with us.
Hi
and
there.
Ray Aldrige, and he's come down to say hello. It's not the first time we've been together though, is it, Ray?
No, that's right.
No.
Yes, the second time now.
There's a second time, and although we're constantly talking to each other on Skype and
That's right.
all the other things, it's good to see you, mate.
You too.
And we thought we'd just do a bit of a recording today, didn't we, to talk about up and coming events and how things are developing really with regards to the whole so-called apostate world,
Yeah.
as the Watchtower would call it, but we obviously see it in a very different light, don't we?
That's right.
And I noticed you over the last few months have really changed in your activity from where you're on Facebook now to becoming a real out-and-out activist in your own right with the things that you've been getting up to.
That's well spotted.
Yes,
Mark,
yes, we keep an eye on you.
You
So,
have indeed.
so it was important. I just wanted to mention that because from the things we've seen, you know, you're doing a heck of a lot of work behind the scenes, as many of the other activists are, and we've got two hats that we wear normally, haven't we? You know,
right.
I mean, we're both Christians anyway on that front, but obviously being members of we know it's faith neutral, and rightly so. And so we can easily just take one hat off and put another hat on because the two are very different workloads, and for very good reasons. And I think most people understand that. And so getting the balance right has become quite natural for myself, and I know it has for you. But how do you find over the last few months? How are you finding the XJW community? Are you noticing a change yourself over the last few months?
It's an interesting one, Mark, because I think sometimes when you just start up getting involved in this, it is difficult to see what's going on, because it's only until you get more involved, you start putting the work in, you start to see all these other communities out there, and when you start seeing the responses, the comments, the engagement in a lot of these sites, you start to realise that, well, it's adding up. There's clearly a big voice out there, and I think that one of the great things about it is that there's so many different ways now, from all what a lot of us are doing, to get people to get engaged, ask the questions, do it in a private way. They can do it without having a concern of being caught up with an elder or with a difficult situation. They can just go on one of these sites, express their view, put in a comment. Maybe they're struggling in some way, and a lot of them are, as we found out. At least they can come on these sites very safely, be respected, and get the support they need, which is the important bit.
And it so is, isn't it? And everybody has that. There are certain common themes that we've noticed with most of the witnesses that come out of the Watchtower, and they sometimes you can be forgiven for thinking that you're the only one that has these same generic issues that we've all had. But actually, when you break it down and you've got other people that have maybe come out a little bit before, and in some cases many decades before, the amount of knowledge that's out there now, and an understanding and empathy that one can share with another is extremely profound for us. We've noticed this now. That people are taking up the mantra of thinking, well, I can do something here. I can help other people in my own way. I might not shout about it, I might not go on YouTube, but I can do something. And so people mostly through the Facebook and social networking sites, Twitter as well, we've noticed that a lot of individuals are becoming more confident, are then reaching out to others to say, hey, come on, you know, there's things that we can share with you here that maybe you didn't realise before. And so the people, then it accelerates, and we're seeing more and more people then sharing it with others. And so it just accelerates and becomes a very positive, mostly positive reaction to all of that help and empathy that's out there. We're loving it. And so because of that, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, is that when we first came on, we noticed a slight change straight to it's starting to happen within a few weeks, because I suppose we were just becoming more active and more alert to it ourselves. But we have noticed, and I know others have too, this massive change and a lot more noise coming out from the XJW community. What I love about it also is the amount of different variants there are, different characters, personalities that come out. Some are full of real sense of humour, others are very angry.
Sure.
Some of them are just desperately lonely, and some of them are just a combination of all those things. But they all are looking for other individuals that they can touch and say, thank you.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, because you know, and within a sentence you'll know, don't you? We see it all the time. If somebody writes a sentence on a Facebook thread, and we all know, don't we? We all know exactly what that means, because we've been there. We understand the gravity behind that sentence. They don't have to say a lot.
And I think one of the nice things is that because of the way there are so many different routes in, there are so many different groups, there's so many different formats or avenues. You know, it could take somebody that say, well, I can't go on a Facebook page, I can't email somebody directly, but I could ping somebody or go on a forum or do something just to kickstart a situation or feeling that I might have, which I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something within their beliefs. They said, well, I've read such and such scripture, and that's just not tying in to what the organisation is telling me, or Watchtower is telling me. And they go to the elder, don't get a satisfactory answer, which is one of the problems that we've had.
Sure,
When we were witnesses that we didn't get satisfactory answers. Back then, where did we go? We didn't have internet, we didn't have all these sources. Now they've got the sources. They can go in there, and maybe they don't even have to give their name, they can give the false name just to protect themselves, but then ask the questions, and they'll have a good, decent reply, an explanation behind it, of which obviously we recommend people follow up by doing the validating and all the research behind it, because you know, we're not perfect, we're not here to say, well, this is what is factual. We're just helping people, guide people into a place where will help them, and you know, and it's been great for that, hasn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic, and you've hit on a really important point there, because there's sometimes a raised expectation level that those that are trying to help know all the answers. They know everything, and quite clearly there are occasions where you know we want to know an answer, and I don't know about you, but when we get asked a question that I don't clearly understand the answer, I'll actually just say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this, but you know, I know somebody that does. And between us we can actually get an access of different information streams, and then say, look, give me a day, give me 2 days, I'll get back to you with some connections to that. And then it's a learning curve for us too, because then we're learning something new.
That's true, yes.
But as time has gone on, you build up an archive of information, and there are some wonderful sites out there, such as, you know, we've got the jwfacts.com. It's an amazing site, you know. But there are others. You've got John Cedars working, you know, doing some wonderful stuff there, and his blog as well. You've got JW Struggle. And I mean, there are so many other really good sites out there. The Screwed Generation with so much information. You've got Snarky, Dan Mira. I could just go on all day.
There's a lot.
With so many, and I apologise if I'm missing people out. I certainly don't want to do that. But anyway, what do you think about? Do you find that the YouTube sites actually help you?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's quite interesting because apart from just, I love the format, the fact that, you know, when you've got somebody with their face in front of you, I think it gives a certain degree of genuineness. And when a person's coming over, when you can see their body language, you can see the expression, the way they're talking, the genuineness of an individual, when he's backing that up by the way he comes over. You know, I mean, when I've done a few videos, I've tried to be very honest, and I love what you guys have done as well. We've got people like Menard Kim as well, and a few others, where they just really want to help. They want to, you know, uncover the errors or uncover the secrecy, so that people can be just open to truth, to absolute fact of what is behind the organisation, what is truly in the Bible, so that they're in an informed position. This is where the YouTubes are great, because some of the stuff there, I mean, I must admit, I thought I had a good understanding of certain scriptures. When I heard some YouTubes, I thought, actually, I don't know those scriptures that well. This has been brilliant, because the person's done so much research and put it on a really great video, and it's been really helpful. So I've been finding them very, very informative and a great support for myself. So I can imagine for others, I'm sure, especially those that are struggling, coming out of the organisation or struggling with their beliefs, it would be a valuable tool for them, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, Mike and Kim's channel has been phenomenal, and how much they've just propelled itself as a couple, but also as a family with Shyla and James as well. You've seen many people relate to what they're saying, because they're very honest.
Yes.
And they're very and blunt as to what they see.
Mm.
So I mean, all of us have different styles, and they've been fantastic at what they've done. And put them all together, and you have a real mosaic of the picture of what Watchtower is about. Would you agree with that? It's, you put it all together, and you say, yeah.
Well, the funny thing
now
that I actually was going to say there is quite interesting. It may almost seem a bit of a contradiction, but if you wanted to understand more about the Watchtower, you don't go to the Watchtower.
Yeah.
Because they won't give you that information. You actually go through these XJW communities.
Mm.
They will provide you the information that the Watchtower won't give you.
No.
Because we don't have any bars hold on what we give or give out. You
No.
know, if it's public information that has once at some point been available, you know, we'll have somebody who's got the original copy of that book or whatever it may be, and are happy to share that, because at the end of the day, it's about being transparent. It's about being open and honest. And how can you do that if you start limiting information about your beliefs? Why does an organisation stop individuals being able to read about what they've published?
And to question their own beliefs.
Yes.
And question everything. I totally agree. When you have that secrecy.
And I read, I remember in I think it was 1 Thessalonians 5, where it talks about, you know, testing your beliefs. How can you do that when you're restricted like that?
No, it's a foreign scripture really when you're a witness, that you know, testing your own faith. How can you if you're not actually willing to actually look at the opposing view? Because they're warned not to. And we know the reasons they try to justify those reasons, but actually when you're using the Watchtower's own literature, it becomes even more ironic that they're being told not to even use that material because it's old light. It's chip paper from yesterday, you know. It's but it's fascinating. We've found out so much, and there is much more on these websites now, and archives from old literature that we can read. And I'm sure Cora and I will be looking at some of that in the future to do more elaborations, shall we say, on what the so-called channel on Earth, God's channel on Earth, were purporting back in those days, decades ago, and how they misled people. So there's a lot of information out there, and from now on though, I'm finding it really exciting. I know Cora is, and about where this is all leading, and there is a sense of balance to it, because sometimes we hear questions on certain sites and you think, well, that's actually very common news now, everybody knows that, but then you suddenly realise that people just coming out of the religion are completely unaware of some of the most basic things, and you think, of course we get so used to hearing these things.
You just think it's common knowledge.
That it's common knowledge, but it certainly is not common knowledge to those still blinded within this mist.
And actually one of the good ones is where it's not so much the Watchtower's view of a certain belief or scripture or doctrine, but it's actually more about what goes behind this. These whole things about regulations and policies and rules. That's a very underpins the Watchtower's whole belief system, is these rules, these policies. And I think it's great that, you know, especially what a lot of you guys have done and a lot of others, is exposing these things to the general public, so that all believers, all publishers of the Watchtower are aware of them, because it impacts them directly.
It does.
Things like the blood policy.
Oh, I mean, look at that one in between, and you know, I think within our as well, we've got the whole blood channel that's being opened up now, and we'll put a link onto that at the end of this video. Extremely informative and very, very professional, the work that Ray Aldrige is doing right now. Once that site's finished and it's up and running, there's already some very good stuff on it, excellent stuff. But it's a real education also for the professionals out there to realise exactly where witnesses are coming from with the mindset and the undue influence that's being carried along when these patients arrive through the hospital door. I mean, we had our own experiences going up to the London Royal Hospital recently ourselves and doing those presentations to the trauma experts, and we found that a very enlightening day, very enjoyable, but also understanding where they're coming from as medical experts when they're dealing with somebody that's under the undue influence, as we call it, of not being able to make a decision for themselves.
And I think not only that, but also allowing people to be more aware of the more facts behind some of the medical standpoints, because you can be very misleading for a publisher to think that the medical profession support this sort of non-blood alternative medicine.
Yeah.
That is not what they're saying for one second. I love the articles you did, which actually spelled that out. That in many situations, in life-threatening situations, blood is the only option.
It's the only option. There's not a doctor that's a sound doctor that would disagree with that. In a trauma or a hemorrhage situation where there is severe blood loss, there is only one alternative to save life, and that is through a blood transfusion. But getting that across, it's a non-argument. It's a non-starter. It's a no-brainer, as we call it. But getting that through to a witness that really has put their life on the line, that's what's so sad, to see so many people still following this route, when quite clearly they're all having the fractions now. In all their different facets, which make up 100% of the blood volume anyway. So it's ridiculous. It's a farce. That's just one area, isn't it? I mean, we've got other ones with all of the terrible cases that we're even hearing in the UK here, of court convictions of the child abuse issues that are going on.
It's really sad.
That's another area that much of what Hour is doing, exposing this stuff, making sure it's out there for the public to see, and understand that what we want Watchtower to do is just basically change its policies and start protecting the child over the paedophile. But of course, with the two-witness rule, it's a slam that they are working to protect paedophiles.
It's quite funny, because I was speaking to, well, I bumped into an ex-friend of mine who was a witness, still a witness today. He didn't realise at the time that I had left. But we had a nice chat, and this subject did come up, and he was not even aware there was a policy. He didn't even understand the policy. He said, as far as I'm concerned, as far as what he believed most publishers believe, is that if somebody commits a child abuse and it's known, if the person doesn't report it, they themselves, as a congregation, would report it to the police. But what they don't realise, this is not in line with actual Watchtower policy.
No. And this is where it falls short, doesn't it? I mean, you look at, we did a video on it a while back on Leviticus chapter 5, verse 10, I think it was, looking, if you see some wrongdoing, then you must report it.
Good point.
But when it comes to actually internal, no, this stuff goes to elders, and then it goes not to the police, but straight to the legal department.
Which ends up in some filing cabinet.
In a sealed envelope. Because there weren't two witnesses. Of course, there never will be two witnesses to this stuff.
Funny how that works, yes.
Weird, isn't it? But yeah, it's an awful situation. We're hoping that we're doing more work on this in the future. And I know another activist, Louise Good, is also very involved in making sure that this is brought out in the future. We're planning to be meeting our MP, or two MPs, the MP for Gloucester, in the near future as well. Because there is a big national inquiry that the Prime Minister now has opened up to say it's just too much. We need to look at all avenues of establishments that are hiding this type of behaviour. And so we want the Watchtower to be brought into that review, because we believe very strongly that the two-witness rule on this occasion, with this type of horrendous act, the two don't mix. You can't have the two.
Well, we're not trying to report that the Watchtower doesn't have any care. We're not saying that for 1 second. But when a policy is not in line with what should be in place for the best care of the child, or more importantly, the child is the priority over anything else, then the policy needs to be changed.
It needs to be changed. I totally agree.
It's that simple, isn't it?
Why is it that the Watchtower, when they get it reported to them about child molestation and rape, that they see it as a sin and not a crime? And that's the problem we had. If someone was to stab someone in the Kingdom Hall, it would be reported to the police within seconds. That's exactly what would happen. But because it's not that, because it's more insidious, and it is such a crime on a child, it's not seen as a crime, it's seen as a sin. And that's the big mistake that the Watchtower is making on this stuff. And that's, individuals might see it as a crime, but the establishment itself does not see it as a crime. And that's why it's concealed. And so those are the type of things that we're, as activists, are all working on now. So
what I like about it is the fact of doing all the research, we come to these very strong conclusions because we have all the evidence in front of us. And I do appreciate that the average witness probably hasn't got the time, or whatever reason, to go through that. At least this work's done for them, and
Sure.
they have the evidence. None of this is hidden. It's available to them. They can get their copies of all the information that has been done and pulled together, and that's where I think this has been very valuable.
It's been fantastic, hasn't it?
Mm.
Now, if it prevents one crime, if it can help one survivor of that type of abuse in the future, even just one, then it was worth doing.
And that's a very good point, because what would happen if you had a situation, it just came to me, where that person had read your article or your YouTube video and thought for themselves, I saw some very serious abuse, I know it's not right, I know it's clearly not biblical, I'm going to report it to the police. If as a result of that, that person was then found clearly guilty, was put away, and more importantly, that abuse had stopped,
Sure.
and then that was found, would the parents of that child be happy that you've done what you've done? I think they would be.
Yeah, yeah,
that you've
absolutely.
reported it, and the proper attention and justice was applied, rather than it didn't go on for years and years instead.
There are, with the authorities that we've been in discussion with, there are child abuse investigation teams right the way across the United Kingdom, known as CAIT, C-A-I-T.
Okay.
And these particular organisations are the police departments that work. They specialise in this type of allegation, and they're very keen to want to know of anybody that has been through this terrible, horrendous crime, to come forward.
Yeah.
And the discussions that we've already had with this department, we haven't obviously with all of the different departments around the country, but with CAIT as it stands as a whole, we've found that the Child Safeguarding Board in Gloucestershire, for instance, has said that they will handle each case in an understanding and sympathetic way, confidentiality involved, and they'll look at all of the angles with it. And especially when it becomes part of a secret organisation known as the Watchtower, that has now a reputation, and a very growing one that's becoming more exposed, of concealing this stuff and not cooperating with the authorities when they need to. So they are becoming more aware of it. They've seen many of these leaked letters that have gone out, and they've said they're keen to want to know more. So I think in time we're going to see a lot more victims coming forward.
I hope so too.
Based on what you were just saying about the reading all of this stuff now, they think maybe it's safe for me to come forward and start reporting this stuff to the police, because in their heads they've been told, no, you can't report it. You're part of the congregation. It's bringing reproach on Jehovah's name. This type of rubbish coming out.
Well, it's quite funny. When I was a witness for over 20 years, I had no idea about these policies. I didn't know about this special flock book, this book of rules and regulations, or whatever you want to call it, the elders. That's exclusive to the elders.
Sure.
I had some rumours about it, but I had no idea what it was. I certainly never had read any element of the contents behind it.
Yeah.
So of all this secrecy, can't be good. It can't be healthy.
No.
Especially when you now discover what we've discovered. It's amazing.
Changing the subject a little bit.
Sure.
What do you think of? Have you had any encounters with the high street literature racks yet? Yourself?
I have actually.
Have you?
I have.
How did that go?
It's been very interesting. It's what I do like about it is, as much as it always has been difficult to approach a Jehovah's Witness on the door, because as soon as you go into a discussion, and then they realise you have a knowledge of the Bible and your belief is not in line with them, it does make it very difficult for them. They find it they become very uneasy, and they do try, and I think you'd agree, they do try to find an exit, if you like, a way to kind of finish the conversation, move on.
Yeah.
It's not their ideal scenario, but with the stands, because they've got all this set up, it's not so easy for them to pack up and go, so they're more inclined to have a chat. And this is kind of what happened. I mean, I was at a couple of different places, and one actually had a kind of marquee in a shopping centre, and because it was quite an elaborate setup, I mean, it would take them, a good 20 minutes plus to unless they want to leave it there, which I'm sure they wouldn't want to. Pack it all up, get it in their bags.
There's no swift exit.
No swift exit. So they're more inclined to have a conversation. Of course, that doesn't mean we abuse the situation. We still have to be loving and respectful.
Yeah.
But at least we have more of a conversation. In fact, to that marquee, a couple of us chatted to a nice couple, couple of people, and we were there for 3 hours.
Wow, 3
Fantastic.
hours.
That's
amazing.
That's almost an unheard of situation for
yeah.
me. And then another time was Liverpool Street Station was a little bit more difficult because the rack was a bit smaller and there's a lot of crowded people. Although they didn't go away, one of them was actually quite rude, sadly. But I did make him stop and think. I mean, I had some great questions to ask him, and I said to him, I'm willing to discuss this with him. I want to know the Bible. I don't say I've got the answers, but I'm willing to share with you what, this is ultimately what we're trying to do, just to share with people what is the truth within what's the facts within the Bible. Not an opinion, not a view, what's the facts. Asking questions is a way to get that. And up to a point, he was quite interested, quite up to it, until he realised that my view was different to his. So he was then asking me about, well, why are you here? Why are you questioning to me? And honestly, that was my reason. Because I want to share the gospel, I want to share God's word to others.
Yeah.
That's pure and simple that. He wasn't so keen, but the lady there was a lot more respectful, and she had, I think, had a much kind of softer heart. She was more of a humble type of individual, and she was more willing to have that conversation. Went very, very well. She wouldn't exchange information or contact details, but one nice thing is she did agree that, you know, I made some interesting points, and she will take those points home and have a think about them and look those scriptures up, and I hope that some seed was sown there. So
Sure.
I do think they're more productive than the door-to-door opportunities, so that's one good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the time that we've been in our high street, they've always packed up and disappeared within seconds.
Really?
And apart from last week, which was the first time when we had Shazulu down for the weekend, and but we were out on the promenade, and they were there, and we went over and saw them. And one of my family relatives, who has shunned me in the high street, was actually sat there, and I went up to her, and it was one of my aunties, and I asked her how she was, and she was very polite. Didn't get up to give me a hug, but that was interesting. And it turns out the other sister that was with her, within a few seconds, with having Vince with us as well, he was talking to them, so maybe that helped.
Sure.
But we talked about Jesus Christ a little bit, about the scriptures, about the Muslim religion as well, which was interesting. But they didn't move on. And eventually another brother came along, who's I know him very well, who's an eldest son, and was very happy to talk and didn't shun us. And that's the first time,
that's a nice change,
the first time that we've actually walked away from them with after having a long and very healthy discussion.
It's great.
That allowed us both to just be civil with each other, and we found that fascinating. It was a wonderful breakthrough. I hope that continues. I have my doubts.
Yes.
But it was nice to be able to just be civil with each other.
But I think it's a very good advert to others to say, you know, do persevere. Sometimes once you get known by certain individuals, there are issues with that individual to then have a conversation. But certainly when it's a fresh environment, where there's faces they don't know. I mean, certainly for me, the people that I met, I never met them before.
Well, there you go.
And then it did allow quite a long conversation, a healthy discussion, and did go well, generally speaking. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for others to approach these people on the street or wherever they're based, and strike some conversations. And I do recommend it. You know, this is an opportunity to actually witness. So, you know, if you're a Christian out there, you know, do take up the opportunities to witness to these people. They are basically, for most of them, are searching for God, and they're genuine, you know, have a heart for God. So that should hopefully encourage them to receive your interest in that. So,
we try and leave them with certain questions as well, and I'm sure you do too. They're not trip-up questions, they're not tricks, but from their own Bible, ask them to read certain scriptures such as Revelation 1:17, things like this about their Jehovah God dying. When did that ever happen? You know, that type of thing. Of course, there is no answer to that because it wasn't Jehovah God. We know that, but in their Bible, that's what he was, the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, but yet I died. And so it's those type of scriptures that get them thinking, well, what on earth is my Bible saying? Yeah,
and then they believe that only the 144,000 go to heaven. There it talks about in Revelation, further down in 7 it may be, where it talks about the great crowd, or the number that crowd that could not be numbered, which they call the numbered, are in heaven to the right hand side of God's throne, which we know is in heaven. So you know, again,
so many different areas, aren't there? So we didn't mention the Apostafest, did we?
No, we didn't. Yeah, must forget that.
That's a very exciting prospect coming up, and I think it's. I know there are meetings and gatherings around the country, small groups of people coming together, but I think this probably might be one of the biggest that's ever been prepared so far. And
Could be.
we've got Richard and Helen coming over from the States,
Yeah.
and some other well-known personalities like Bo, I think, and John Cedars
That's right.
will be there. And we've decided we definitely want to be there as well. This is a special occasion for us
I
all
think
to
so.
be able to just have big hugs and
Yeah.
shaking our hands and saying, "That's what you look like in real life," you know.
That's right. Yeah, it'll be good.
So it'll be fantastic.
Mm.
It's just I'm sure the time will just fly
Yeah,
by.
I think it's on the 23rd, isn't it?
23rd.
Saturday, at the Riverside by Vauxhall, which, in case you're not sure where that is, if you go right up against Vauxhall Bridge, but staying on the south side, it's like a new complex that's built to the left side of it.
Right.
So
okay.
the bridge will be to your right if you're looking at the river from the pub. And in that complex, you literally go inside that complex, which is mainly residential, but within that, right up against the river edge, is where the pub is.
Fantastic.
Just in case you have trouble
Why
finding
don't we'll put the link on this as well,
Yes,
so that
good
others can.
thinking.
What I would say though, if there are individuals out there that want to come along, we would very much can we respectfully ask that you get in contact with Liz Sorbo, just to let her know that you'll be attending. So that helps, just so that we can get an idea of numbers and the official list. It really would help. And Liz Sorbo, who's been very, very kind to take up her part of this.
Yeah,
And
she's
once
been very
again,
good, hasn't she?
another
Yes.
activist out there that's
Absolutely.
helping out and doing so much. So yeah, it'll be a very special evening, and I know it starts at 4, but for many of us we won't be getting there till a little bit later because
Sure.
we've got other activities that we're involved with that day that won't allow us to get back for 4
Right.
o'clock. So it'll be a bit later.
But at least that means whatever time you can make, during the evening, there will be people there. So
There'll be people there,
Yes.
and we'll definitely be there. And
Fantastic.
all of those other names that we've always seen but not seen their pictures. I'm looking forward
Here's
to
a
shaking hands
chance
with
to meet
you.
them.
Well,
Yes.
cool, I know you. So who the hell are you? But we'll find
Yeah.
out who they are, and
So-
it'll be great to shake their hands. And
Okay.
so thank you, Ray.
You're
And
welcome. Thank you for inviting me on.
No, it's great. Would you like some tea now? We're going to
I
have
would
a
indeed.
bit of tea.
Sounds great.
Right then. Okay, let's go and have some.